You're listening to Faith, Relationship, and Community Podcast, where we talk about all things faith, relationship, and community. My name is Noah. I'm the lead pastor of Morningside Lutheran Church. Today, I sit down with Tim and Nate from Gospel Mission as we talk about new programming coming up. So, Tim, I've known you since I've moved here.
Yes.
So I've been here 4.5 years, and I think you were one of the first ministry partners, so to speak, that Mark, who we just saw, drove me up and pulled me into your office. And so you've been with Gospel Mission for a while. How long have you been with them?
You know, I did take a sabbatical, though technically it was a working sabbatical. Actually, today would be my 8th year anniversary if there was no disruption on my service. I was first introduced to the mission back in 2010. Like you, I was fresh to the community and had a pastoral referral to go introduce myself to the executive director at the time, and that would have been July of 2010. And I began serving there then. Had the privilege of sitting on the board for a term, 2014 to 2017.
Okay.
At which point, as I was resigning my boardship, I guess, I was offered a position on staff and a function as the chaplain for 5 years. I took a working sabbatical, and then Nate was kind enough to hunt me down and bring me back. Yeah,
that's awesome. Nate, we just met, which is awesome. It's great to meet you and to have a conversation with you. But how did you get connected with Gospel Mission? How long?
So I've been here 4 years. 4 years at the mission. It's been quite the journey. Awesome, amazing. And it really kind of started, I would probably say, before I even knew, back when I was in seminary. I was in seminary. My second to last year, went through this program. I was like this discipleship, evangelism, coaching. So it's the one where you find out how you're wired. You find out your spiritual gifts and whatnot, and you don't feel so bad about yourself. Like, I'm not, God created me this way, right?
Okay, so I don't have a gift of administration.
Right,
so
it's okay to be dumb sometimes.
Right, I know.
But I just remember in there, as I was in there in the seminary, something was telling me, it was on my heart, work at a homeless shelter. And I remember my professor at the time, who's a good friend now, and he gave us this little profile and said, what's the Lord been saying to you that you haven't been doing? And I just put on there, work at a homeless shelter. A year later, I just get a call from a venture staffing who I did some work with in the past, and they're like, hey, we got the perfect job for you. Do you want to go to the Gospel Mission? Okay. So that's how I got introduced.
Wow.
The first dude I saw was actually this guy over here. He had his office, and he was a very kind and again, it's been a journey. I walked in, and our former executive director, Paul's like, hey, I'd love to offer you the job. Okay. And you can oversee the thrift store. So did that. And from there, it was like, I don't know how much you want to know about this. It's been a crazy journey where 6 months in, he told me, he said, hey, I think you're the next executive director. And I was like, okay, prayed about it, got confirmation from God and his word. And about a year and a half later, he says, I'm going to make you the assistant executive director. I said, okay. And 2 days later, he unfortunately had a stroke. So I get thrown in this whole thing. For 5 months, I filled in. We now have a great executive director in Randy Ehlers. And then part of it was also bringing Tim back. Like, hey, how can we make this better? I'm kind of feel like I'm like the David, the young guy who let's just go out. We can
there you go.
Get the Goliath. Yeah, it's cool. And so that's a little bit about the story about coming to the mission. So.
That's awesome. And so you guys have been working together since and know each other well. So what's your position titles at the mission?
So mine is Associate Executive Director of Ministry.
Okay. And then
the Director of Men's Programming.
Okay, very good. Okay, so for somebody who we're talking about the mission, what is it? What do you guys do?
Sometimes I feel like, what don't we
I know,
do?
that's right. Yeah, that could be such a broad question. And kind of explain that.
In some ways, God providentially has sort of landed us as an artery within our community to minister to the homeless sector. Obviously, we have services to our community such as meals, a food pantry, and a thrift store. But I would say our bread and butter is really the programs that we roll out to those who receive residency from us.
Yeah.
They are now called guests, and so they come into our care and are introduced to the Lord through chapel, through daily devotions, and then get an opportunity to work with my staff, the caseworking department, so that we can develop some type of plan to bridge them out of our care into some type of a stabilized living. And so really that's, I would say, the keystone to what we do is dealing with broken people and asking the Lord to let us be an agent of transformation in their life.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, kind of just to go off of that, it's interesting when Tim and I go to other agencies and do what we call these info tours,
Sure.
learn about the gospel mission, who we are.
Yeah.
I think just from that and just other missions I've gone to, like homelessness is completely like different than when it was probably 50, 70 years ago.
Sure. How would you say?
Well, I think just like the history that I've read about and talking to other people, it was the main need was that, hey, they're just alcoholics. Just someone who's drunk, they struggle with alcohol,
Yeah.
they just need a place to stay. And we still run into that quite a bit, but it is so diverse now to where it's the person who's an alcoholic, who's a drug addict, who just lost their job, who has mental illness, who just was raised in not a good environment.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say unfortunately, but at the same time, fortunately, because of the opportunity, had a couple young kids, 18 years old, in our care. I mean, you're just like their big brother. So, like he said, we minister to the ones who are broken, and as you know, reality is we're all broken.
Yeah,
we're all in
absolutely.
poverty in some way, shape, or form.
Sure.
But the lowest of the lows, I would say, the ones that people probably kind of pushed aside and said, we don't really want to. We can't deal with it. So that's who we minister to. And like he said, a lot of different things we do with our program. We feed the community. We have shelter, obviously. We do food pantries.
Yeah.
So we have our thrift
So
store.
the food pantry. I for whatever reason haven't walked through it yet until we were with you a few weeks
On our
back
tour,
now.
yes.
Yeah, which was awesome to be able to see that. How many families come through there weekly or monthly, whatever number you keep?
Quite a few.
Yeah.
150 on a week.
Yeah,
basis?
I mean about 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, about 50. I would say
When you're open, okay.
Yeah, 50 in the beginning months, but you'll start to notice towards like right now, 20th through the 30th, it could be about 70.
Yeah.
So it could be anywhere between 150 to 220, I'd say,
Okay.
on average.
And what makes these families unique is these aren't one-timers. These are those who have come to really build a dependence upon our services. And so more than just, sort of strangers that come on a campus, these become dearly beloved friends. I mean, these are, if we are likened to shepherds, these are our sheeps and our goats and sometimes our wolves.
That's right, exactly.
But as you know, Pastor Noah, these are the ones that God has, tasked us as stewards, as overseers, if you will. And so it's in some incredible relationships. I think one of the things that Nate and I both take away from our capacities here is the community that we've built. I run into hundreds, if not thousands of people throughout an annual basis at the mission.
Sure.
And we get all of those opportunities and privileges to speak to these lives. And so it is a revolving door, where we can speak regularly on a consistent basis to these families.
Yeah. We've got food pantry we run here, and something within the last couple of years, we've just been going out with a pad of paper and writing down prayer requests and all that. And it's really cool to see. I mean, to your point, you get to know them in such a deeper level than just meeting the food need, which is great. But to know that they're prayed for, that this is part of the flock that we have here that the Lord has entrusted with us. So that's really cool. I mean, that you've got at least have that built in. But to your point earlier about the diversity now that you see in homelessness, maybe different from 50 years ago. That might make things a little more complex for a place like yours, where you got people from every which way. And so how do you balance that? How do you navigate that?
It's a good question.
Yeah, that's right. How do we work towards navigating that?
Well, and one thing too, you talked about the info tours is, and I get it, like hospitals and places, like they just discharge someone, hey, just go to the gospel mission. Again, we're the catch-all for everybody.
Sure,
so
yeah,
that, you have all these different people. I'm huge into, you have to have a vision. It's biblical, right? People will perish if there's no vision. Yep. So what is it we're called to do? Like, Lord, what is it we're called to do? We know we're ministering to the homeless. Yeah. But what is it? And he hits it, when he said life transformation. I mean, that's just one is a huge believer in Ephesians 2:10, we're God's masterpiece, those of us who are in Christ, that he has good plans for us. But that masterpiece word there, like you're this beautiful pioma. And looking at people like that, knowing like, hey, like that is someone, but kind of just answer that question is that vision is knowing this is who we are. It's transformation. So for us, it's a program. Like, all right, our stay. You're going to be with us for 6 months, possibly a year. If there's ones that we can't, like right now, the biggest need, and it's tough, is mental illness. Yeah. We can bring a guy in that, we can talk with them. They can go to chapel. They can do a chore, breathalyze. But they're just, unfortunately, there's just something there. So we have to be able to say, hey, we're just one person, one organization in this community. So who else can do it better? Yeah. So it's kind of a little humility, not trying to be all to everybody. So start with that vision. This is who we are. And now it's, okay, what are some other resources that we have where people can go and go to and be able to say say no. And it's really tough because, again, these are the ones that, like, no one else is probably going to really take care of them. But knowing that Sioux City's is filled with organizations, we're just one part of it. So,
sure. Yeah. Yeah. You use the, I think, analogy, an artery in the community. And that's just, that's really cool to look at it that way. Talk about, like, how have you just seen the Lord move in some of the men who have come through Gospel Mission?
You know, it's interesting. Like Nate said, a big part of my role, almost like a liaison or an ambassador, if you will, an ambassador, pleading with men, be reconciled with Christ. You know, reaching out to the other established organizations, entities in the communities to meet these needs, because these young men that Nate referenced, you know, one of them, when he came into our care, and of course, there's that introductory period, as I'm working through the learning curve, how can I best minister to this young person? And his big goal was, I'd like to finish my senior year in high school.
Wow.
Now, most of us hear that, and I'm thinking, well, I'll introduce you to WIT because we have a wonderful HiSID program at WIT, and we can get you your GED. And he's like, no, Pastor Tim, I want to go to like the winter formal and homecoming and prom, and I want to be in, you know, math class, and I want to go to a biology lab, and I'm, you know, like a deer in headlights. Like, you know, this, the stereotype of what a homeless person is like has really been detonated. You know, just coming in when you were, when you graciously welcomed us, I was recovering from some stress. We just had to make a sort of a first responder call, not an ambulatory call, but had to have law enforcement come on campus because one of our beloved community members, he's migrated here a couple of decades ago, but still hasn't learned the language and is still adjusting and is starting to show signs of maybe mental illness. And so he's having thoughts of harm and kind of delusions. And so you're having to quickly deal with that crises. And so we called law enforcement, who was kind enough to function as an escort to get to the crisis center, who's part of Siouxland Mental Health, which is one of our other great partners. And so, you know, when someone comes into our care, there is a sort of an interview process because, like Nate said, God designed us with specific gifts and specific services to our community. And having the discernment and the wherewithal to say, okay, are we able to help? And if not, who can? Now, what that requires is, and this is what Pastor Nate, our associate, always talks about, is that relationship. It's like we still have to take the time to invest and to hear their story. So a big part of the interview is, you know, hearing their story to see if we are the agency for them. And so, but to answer your last questions, it's like, part of our information tours is to inform the community who we are, what we do, and what homelessness looks like. In the past, I think, you know, maybe, I'm not saying that it was a dangerous form of benevolence, but we were the catch-all, and we sort of broadened our net to catch everybody that had some type of need. And unfortunately, it was to the detriment to one of those in needs because we weren't actually able to help them. And so they would sort of get a respite or sort of a reprieve in our care, but they were never really helped. Their life was never really transformed. And so it's really caused us to reach out to those in our community, you know, to help. When it comes to mental illness, obviously the three of us would agree, no doubt the audience would too, is that Christ is the remedy. He's the antidote. I bet you as pastors, all of us prayed this morning, God, please renew our minds.
You know, the things that we're thinking.
Yes. You know, but sometimes to have that baited audience, to connect with them, they need to be stabilized. And that's something that we just don't do. We are not medical practitioners. And so we don't, you know, prescribe, we don't diagnose. We try to help those who are in that, you know, area, you know, to supplement what's going on, but that's something that we don't do. And that's where we need to get sort of the mental health practitioners, you know, working on our team.
Right. Faith obviously is at the core of all of this. And you guys have chapel that's required, a morning chapel and evening chapel. Talk about that and who is involved in chapel and leading chapel and what people might be able to jump into.
We've both been chaplains.
Morningside Lutheran does a great job doing chapel. Mark. So we do have, and we're going to switch it a tad bit as we roll out to Metamorphosis, our Christian discipleship program.
I want to talk about
we're excited about that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But for chapel, it's interesting because you don't know if you're going to see a guy one day or 6 months or a year. So you don't know the opportunities, and Tim's huge on that word opportunity. I'm more of opportunity. And so we have our guys, hey, if you're just going to stay with us, we require you to go to a chapel service. We have a morning one for guys who work nights, who work mid shift or night shift. And then we have a night one for the rest of our guys who are not working or who work day shift. Yep. And through that, we have some church partners. You guys do a great job there. We have Merle from Lamar's. Is he up in Lamar's area?
No, he is the Morris Reformed Church.
Okay. Yeah, church, up there.
Reformed Church in Morris.
Staff does it quite a bit, especially for our morning chapels. We have our staff, our chaplain does it, as well as a caseworker and a few other ones. We do have 7 pastors on staff. So that's the beauty of it all. Sure, so you're just like, all right, someone
We're
can
probably itching to lead a chapel too.
So chapel or like counseling. There you go. You got one person there. So we do have a lot of more so during the daytime. It's staff, but at night we do have a couple of partners. But we are just itching. I'm gonna be honest, itching for more partners,
looking for more.
And the reason why is because one of the things we do, Pastor Noah, is we made this maybe a year ago, I want to say. We had it to where, and we thought this was going to be, all right, if there's anything that's going to be horrible, we're going to get pushback on, it's this. We required our residents every Sunday, you can't stay at the mission to go to church. You got to go out to an outside service. And the reason why we did that was because, hey, this is short-term care. We believe we're so huge into when you leave our care to be a part of a body of believers. To come alongside, to help you, to fellowship with you, to provide you with needs. And so we said, hey, you got to go. And they did, and they love it. Like Elevate, Pastor Chris Versteg, his church is our popular church. Everyone goes there. They love that. There's a few other ones. And so
you're pretty close to them in proximity, are you?
Walking distance.
Well, okay, and they more recently got a new building too. So still pretty close. Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome.
So really cool just to see this the relations there. But we stand firm on the chapel because again, it starts with the gospel. That's transformation right there. And we don't know if we're going to see you one time or 100 times. So.
Yeah.
And knowing that we're, transitionary, I remember sharing with you when you came on campus recently that by and large, most people that come into our community came from another community. Whether it be law enforcement and they were in custody, or maybe they came from a rehab center or a mental health institution. They come into our community, but it's just temporary. It's to transition into, hopefully, the kingdom of God, to a local fellowship and body of Christ where they become the new community. And so chapel becomes like this utility of transition. It's where we invite pastors to come in, local shepherds, where our guests can get familiar with them and hopefully not just resonate with them, not just track with them, but really connect with them, because ultimately, again, as we are just a short season, which has a beginning, and of course all seasons have an end, it's wanting to see them transition into the care of a faithful shepherd, which is why, like Nate said, we're begging and pleading the body of Christ to come onto our campus and really to conduct a chapel, because, again, we don't know how long someone's going to be in our care, though we have term limits, but ultimately the goal is to have them transition into a local church and that become their community. So we're very much a transition, which is a part of the transformation, is they come in our care and then they leave our care.
That's great. And while they're there, though, I mean, you guys have just done a great job fostering a really meaningful culture there and setting. I remember, I think I shared this when I came and led guitar. It would have been months ago now. It was just really cool. I mean, the men just are singing and singing, and it got to a point where we dismissed him. And I wasn't sure if I was supposed to do this. I dismissed him early for those who wanted to go. But if you wanted to stay, we stuck around and did more worship. And probably about 3/4 of them stayed and just sang. And man, it was so cool just to see men. What I recognized and felt in that room was just hungry for the Lord, and how cool that is to be able to do that for them.
Thanks for coming down.
Yeah. Metamorphosis. Talk about that.
Well, as most of us know, obviously it's a term given to us by the Apostle Paul, and it speaks to the transformation. That we see that larva in that cocoon blossoming or metamorphosizing into a butterfly. And it really speaks to this concept or this principle of transformation. But transformation doesn't really happen through osmosis. It's something where you need to dedicate some intentionality to really invest into a life. And so recently we made a decision to sort of put on hold one of our legacy ministries called the Single Men with Children, of which I was the director for, and utilize that facility, the apartments that are on our campus, to dedicate to a Christian discipleship program. This program will be launching, actually coming right up in a couple of days, April 1st, where the men are going to transition out of our shelter to launch to our metamorphosis program. Those that apply and that go through the interview process and are given an offer of acceptance and they come into our program. 6 months. And what that looks like is dedicated classroom time. We have 8 classes taking place each week with a myriad of subjects. Nate has been kind enough to teach through our Heart of Addictions program. I will be taking him through biblical manhood along with the Petrin epistles. Gary, our chaplain, he'll be taking him through James, Ephesians, and several other books that deal with, the spiritual keys to growth type of things and sort of the root of cause and sort of the harmatology. And then conflict resolution and some money management, some very practical, very pastoral things. And so they'll have a dedicated morning to class, to one-on-ones, and then in the afternoon after lunch, we'll have a time of work therapy. And what that looks like is, more of that life skills, giving them an opportunity on campus to develop some skills, some utilities and tools they can put into their belt, but also sort of in-kind service, giving them an opportunity to give back to the mission. So often we get asked by guys, what can I do to give back? And so the in-kind service is a big part. Now I have to confess, I have to disclose my cards. I will utilize these men to beautify our campus.
There you
So
go.
elbow grease never hurt nobody.
Good stewards of the place that we live, and we got to be able to do that.
Wise as a serpent, I think I once read. Gentle as a dove.
Shrewd in there, but that's good. That's good.
So we'll be looking to our director of facility and maintenance to sort of help lead that, but we're going to be utilizing this, guys, on our thrift stores, in the food pantry, and everywhere on campus. What we're hoping someday, and this was sort of conceived by our executive director, is finding outside groups where we can then begin to employ our men, so then we can sort of be a workforce that's available on, in our community for local nonprofits and maybe utilize those funds for some of the needs within Metamorphosis. And so it's really exciting. Nate and I are sort of on this countdown. We're giddy. The rest of the staff is kind of burdened because it's a new program and there's quite a bit of work. But I'm excited, brother. I'm looking forward to April 1st.
It took time to materialize. Like if it wasn't for this, he wouldn't be here.
Yeah,
it started with the whole transformation, and it was talking to a few other directors, what does that look like? And the thing that kept going to mind, I tried to look at it holistically. I was like, okay, you gotta like a program.
Amen.
Prayed about this. I mean, so many times you jot stuff down, you throw it away. You jot stuff, you throw it away. And eventually, this one day, no joke, like, hey, guess who tried to apply to the gospel mission? Tim Hall. I'm like, what? No way. So just for my take, is seeing this from like the whole from the beginning to now it's about ready to launch. It's been cool, and we've been doing a lot of other stuff at our campus as well, remodeling our thrift store, everything. So yes, these guys are getting utilized quite a bit.
Yeah, that's cool. But you're looking for, are you calling them mentors? People to come along the way. Talk about that, what that looks like.
Obviously, commissionally, we see that in Matthew 28, the Great Commission, and it's to make disciples. And sometimes I use, Nate would, dovetail sort of the concept of coaching, mentoring, discipling. It really means the same thing. Sometimes in this space, we have to use terminology that some of our secular partners would understand, so we call it mentoring. But again, when we look at the facility that God has given us for Metamorphosis, we've recently called it, you ready? The Bridge.
The Bridge.
The Bridge.
That's his
bridge. Was that like the ribbon cutting moment?
Where's our green coats and our red coats?
Right, exactly.
But the reason we named it that is to remind the guys that this is a bridge into the local body of Christ, to a local fellowship. And so keeping them, one of my favorite Psalms, which has helped me as a church planter, is Psalms 84, verse 6. And it says this, "Blessed is the man whose mind is set on pilgrimage." And obviously, the Apostle Paul, I think of what he penned to the church there in Philippi, that we are sojourners. And it's easy to forget there is a finish line, and that's eternity with God through Christ. And so reminding these guys, this is temporary. And so we're really admonishing them to invest and take advantage of this. You are going to get the privilege of 6, if not 7 months, to dedicate, to devote to pursuing Christ. I think of when we were in seminary, it's like I was still full-time employed. I still, married with 4 children, I couldn't just, park the car and devote myself to this, but these men can. And so we're really encouraging them to devote a seriousness, their hearts, their minds, everything to this, because I was mentioning to Nate, and I think this is important, after we train these men, we should employ these men. Maybe after we train them, we can, if not launch them into the local community at the local church level, or even retain them on our campus to work for us. And so there's some big expectation. Yeah. There's some big hopes. Nate always challenges me, shuts the door, and he says, "All right, Timmy, dream." And I'm
that could be like the worst thing you said.
I don't know. Right, yeah, don't give too much time, but enough.
Yeah. You know, so, and again, the Lord has been faithful in this. There's been a lot of prep. There's been a lot of meetings. I mean, probably couple, if not 300 or 400 hours put into this. Yeah. The scrutiny of the curriculum and the syllabus is alone, and just everything we've put into it. So I do have high hopes that the Lord's going to do something in the lives of these men. So we're super excited. It launches April 1st. It's a 6-month program. There's going to be sort of an introductory phase, because we're going to be using these guys to sort of remodel our apartments to get them ready, tour ready for them. And then they start classes about May 1st, if not April 28th. And so it's coming up next month.
Yeah. So for those who will watch this, and maybe the Lord has put it on their heart to say, I want to be involved in something like that, what would they do? How could they do that?
Yeah, I would say, reach out to myself or Tim. One of the things that him and I have kind of to see how guys is kind of given these random people. I mean, him and I do other things like mission trips and whatnot, and some people are interested in this. But one of the things that guys have, which I don't know, it's not horrible, is at night, they've got free time. They can do whatever they want to do. Yeah. Now, it's not horrible by any means. You're in a campus. It's gated, so you're not going to go out and party. But what we want to do is also that mentor. So small groups, if you want to come in and you want to just, hey, I want to do a Bible study. My small group of guys, I want to come in. He has a good friend who's we're going to go on a mission trip with, I go to Central, and I want to just go through the book of James with these guys. Perfect. So every Thursday, you're going to come and do the book of James. If you want to take guys out and take them here. You want to go take them out to lunch. Build relationships.
Yeah, that's
Again,
cool.
Whatever you want to do, we'd love to have you there. If you want to eventually one day teach a class, exactly. We would love for that to happen. For you guys to teach a class, because again, 6 months and then out they're back in not in the community, but they're done with the program, and we want to just help them succeed.
Yeah. Well, that's really exciting. Just the community's blessed by you guys and what you do, and so thank you. And thank you for taking this time to share about what you're doing and what you're excited about. That's awesome.
Thanks for having us.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be back.
Thanks for listening today to our Faith, Relationship, and Community podcast. For more episodes, check out our website, morningsidelutheran.com, or on our social media platforms. We appreciate you joining. God bless.